Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's special event. We are going to be walking you through the Crisis Communication app. My name is Kelly Cleland. I am a Customer Success Manager and a TryThisAt.Work Teams in 30 leader. We have joining us today Brian Haubert. He is an account technology strategist with Microsoft, and he is the one that's actually going to be walking us through this crisis communication app and how you can easily enable this for your organization. He'll be walking you through from an end user perspective, showing you some of the admin controls, and then also talking about just some best practices around the setup. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Brian. So Brian, welcome, and thank you for presenting today.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I'm going to share my screen here. So let me know when that comes live.
You're good, Brian.
All right, great. Some of you may have seen the blog announcement where we published last week around the crisis communication Power App template that we made available to our customers. So this is a prepackaged application that we built and made available to our customers at this time of need with the coronavirus, but it could be applicable to many situations. So first off, before we jump into the demo, I just want to talk about what we've made available. So there is an end user component of this. So what your end users would experience, interact with in terms of receiving updates from a crisis group. There's an admin application on the back end that Kelly alluded to, where you can go in and configure these things. There'll be a Power BI dashboard that allows you to graphically look at on a map the impact on your user workforce in terms of their work habits, working from home, out of the office during the time period of the crisis. And then we packaged all of this nice guidance in terms of how to build this. So if anybody's ever been through an app in a day workshop, it's very similar in terms of how to load the packages and configure the different connections. So we'll start with demoing that. The other thing I want to just kind of get out of the way up front is around licensing. So we'll demo this embedded in Microsoft Teams. And again, during this time of need, we've created an offer giving our customers 6 months of our Office 365 E1 capabilities, which includes Teams. So that gives you a way to do remote meetings, embed apps like this for your communications in there, etc. There's a couple premium features within the Power Platform that this application uses, namely push notifications, and those have been made free in our customers' tenants, again, to enable the usage of this. And then lastly, the Power BI piece. If you decide to leverage that component of it, it does require some Power BI licensing, either Pro or premium capacity, to be more specific there. So now let's jump into the demo. If folks have questions, feel free to use the Q&A pane. Kelly will help triage those and we'll address those. So what we've done here, I'm going to jump back into Teams. I have actually embedded this app in my Teams experience here through the addition of the app feature. Now, you could push this out as a policy to make this experience happen for all your customers, and there's instructions in the setup. So within the app, it allows a few different things. First off, it shows you who you are so that you can see that it's identified you, and it allows you to share your status with others. So if you've been impacted, if your kids are off school and your work behaviors have changed, maybe you need to work from home or be out of the office. So first off, you'd click in here and you would be able to pick the dates that you're going to be off. So let's say my kids are off school through the 27th and I need to take those days and work from home. I'll go ahead and submit that. So that's going to put that into a back-end repository, and we'll show you how that aggregate data surfaces back up. So then it says, well, maybe you want to share that with your team. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Kelly. And what this will do is take an email and send it to her. And then it also allows you an opportunity to set your out of office. So you can set it for inside your organization and outside your organization. I'm going to go ahead and skip that step for the purposes of this demo. So again, that information has been sent to Kelly because she was a team member that I wanted to notify, but it's also aggregating that data at a company view. And so when we get to the admin portion of this, you'll see how that presents itself. So down at the bottom of the application, you see several different areas. You've got company news. This is where your corporate communication group will post those messages that are intended to go to all groups of employees. You've got world news, where you can embed an RSS feed, tips, FAQs, and links. These are all configurable components that we'll show here in a second, that you can embed the appropriate information. And then lastly, contacts. And then there's a step here for make a request. So as an example, if you were impacted by the virus and needed immediate assistance, you could submit a request there. So let's go through and show what each of these look like. So company news. So we've taken it upon ourselves to configure this, but you can push down news articles and it presents a card for each one. You can click the read more and it opens that up for you to give it an opportunity to read the whole article. So again, these are managed by the crisis admin team, which you configure. You can also go in here and search in each of these. So going over to the world news, we've embedded the RSS feed for the CDC in here, and you can see the latest updates flowing in here real time. Helpful tips. Again, staying productive while working remotely, tips for avoiding coronavirus. These are, places where you can configure this information. A frequently asked question box here, and you can actually set the priority of how you want these to display in here sequentially. So if, after you've been live for a couple of days with this, a common theme keeps popping up, you can actually surface that higher in the list. Links. So again, this is helpful links to content that maybe forms, maybe requests that people need to submit. We'll let this load for a second. Go on to emergency contacts here. There we go. So again, configuring emergency contacts. In our case, we've used geographic region as the divider, but you could do divisional or whatever it is that makes sense for your organization. Try links one more time, see if this guy loads. All right, I'm not sure what's going on there, but we will jump on to the next piece here, which is make a request. So we'll say I'm feeling sick. How can I get help? And I'm going to submit that. So again, this is the end user experience. This is what your employees would go into and would be able to interact with to get the latest information, to submit a request, to find out who to contact. The next thing we're going to go into is what we've created. So we've created a team called our Crisis Command Center. And in there, we've embedded our help requests, which you can see, I'm feeling sick. How can I get help? That came in through a back-end flow, and it allows my command center team to interact with that person. Either I can start a chat directly from here, or I can engage in an email. But it gives you the context of who the person is, when they submitted it, and what message they sent. And as you can see here, it triages all of those. So you have that history there, and you can engage with your employees. Just like any teams, it's got a common files section. So if you had files you needed to put out there relevant to your response. A nice feature in Teams is that you can embed web pages. And so Microsoft's Bing team has published coronavirus tracker. So this could be very helpful information to your crisis response team. And you can embed this content directly in your team. So I'm going to jump the employee status tracker, and I'm going to go into the admin page. So again, this is one of the Power Apps that comes directly with the application that we've configured. So all the features that you saw along the bottom of the end user application can be toggled on or off very easily. You will configure an admin email. You can add a logo to your application if you desire. You'll create an Active Directory group. So this is the group that the company news notifications will get sent to, and then this is the notification method. So you can decide to push those notifications out through Teams, or you can push those out through email, or however you'd like to there. And then this is where you point that government RSS feed that I mentioned. So let's go back and we'll show how you would actually load some of that content into your application. As you saw, we had a list of contacts in there. So by going into this company contact section, you can go in and create or edit existing contents. If I choose to create a new one, name, email address, country. This was the Twisty section that allowed you to aggregate your common contacts, a phone, and additional comments where you can add maybe a job description or why you would want to contact that person. So jumping back, company news. So we talked about this being something that you would push out. So I'm going to create a new post, and I'll just say important, all offices are being closed effective 3/18. I'll just give you an example, details, and blurb. Save that, and I'll show you how that information surfaces, but you can see that that will show in here, and then it will also be distributed to that Active Directory group through the means of communication that we configured in the admin page. So we'll show you that in just a second as that flow runs. Helpful tips, links, and FAQ. I'll show these quickly, but they're all essentially the same. It's just you pop this up and it gives you a new form for entering the information. The one thing I will call out here is on the FAQ page in particular. I mentioned where you can include a ranking. So this number that you put in here allows you to drive some of the sorting behavior so you can surface the most common questions up to the top. All right, so I'm going to jump back here, and so now I'm going to go over to the employee status tracker. So if you remember, one of the first things I did when I went into the app, and I'll just show that again quickly, I went in there and I did that share status. So I said that I was working from home for specific days. I was able to notify people, and I said that information was aggregated. It's actually stored in a SharePoint list, and if you choose to, you can enable your geographic location, your GPS coordinates. And so where that becomes valuable is you can go in here, and we've created a Power BI dashboard that reads off that data. And so we preloaded this with some employee information, so giving you a hypothetical scenario. But what this allows you to look at is the trends by date of what the impact of the crisis is on your workforce. How many people are working remotely on a given day? How many people are out of the office on a given day? And where are those hotspots of where those people aren't able to work in their normal fashion? So let's just kind of zoom in here on the United States, and you can see gives you this information. And then you can, if you wanted to look on a specific date, you can see where are all the people that are out of the office on this specific day, which is March 5th. So that is those are the different pieces that are packaged as part of the solution. So the end user application, the admin application, and then the instructions for putting all of that together in the application, or embedding it within Teams as you need to. I want to go over to the instructions quickly.
Yeah, Brian, really quick, we got a good question.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good segue for going into the documentation.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our audience has actually previously installed the app, but they're not seeing quite some of what you're showing. Can you just explain for those who have previously deployed how they need to essentially redeploy that package out?
Yeah, that's a good call out. So let me jump through a couple things here, and I'll get to that question. So specifically, you will see under the prereqs a link to the download the assets. That's going to take you to GitHub, and you're going to see a zip file in there. And if you look in that zip file, there's going to be a couple different packaged files, additional zip files. One for the end user app, one for the admin app, some for the flows, and then a PBIX file for your Power BI. If you go down in here, you will see that the application has been updated. So the version that we're looking at is this one here from March 12th, and that's where you're seeing that latest experience. Potentially, if you downloaded it, maybe back in this time frame, some of those UI enhancements were not there. So if you would like to see those, what I would suggest is downloading the latest copy of the package and reinstalling those. Now, when you do that, a couple things. You'll go through the instructions just like you would. So it'll tell you how to import. And when you get to this screen here, you'll see right here, this import setup. The first time you go through this, it's going to say create as new. Now, when you go back and you re-upload the package, so you choose this package, it will still say create as new here. It's very important that you click this link and you say update existing, and then you choose the right item that you're updating. And what that will do is force the app to refresh with the latest code for that specific component instead of creating a new version. And then if you've got that application embedded in Teams, it will just update to the latest version instead of having to update or upload or point a different application to that. Do you, any feedback on the line if that answers the question, Kelly?
Nope. Yes, we're good there. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So I wanted to call out a couple watch outs just from my experience with this. I'm not a Power Apps expert. I played with it throughout the last couple 6-8 months, but the instructions state here that it should take you about 20 to 25 minutes. The first time I went through this, I was very detail oriented. I wanted to make sure I was doing it right. And I spent probably about 2 hours going through that. Now, subsequently, after I got things set up, I did do an update, and I found that to be much quicker, but I would just make sure that you allocate the right amount of time for that. The second one that I wanted to call out specifically is if you want to refresh or update, or things aren't working the way you suspect and you need to re-upload, make sure you change that that piece here from import as new to update existing. The other thing that I'll mention is during the setup steps, when you import, you'll see these red exclamation points here. These mean that as you're doing the import, it's reliant, the package that the developer created leveraged a connection that couldn't be included as part of the package. And so you need to either use an existing connection that you've created or create a new one. And so when you go to import, you'll have to select your, you'll have to configure this. And when you do click this link here, it will pop up this additional window. When you create your new connections, the one piece of advice I would give you is give it something meaningful. So, you know, the company name, Crisis App, SharePoint connector is an example. And the reason that's valuable is if you go back through and you have to reconfigure it, it won't just say SharePoint connection. Some of these things are application specific and have pointers in the connection. And by giving it a specific name, you can ensure that you select the right connection when you upload it again. I wanted to call out in the instructions. Let me find it. Right here. Optional, enable location updates. So you saw where I demoed the geographic map. If you do not complete this step to specifically enable the latitude and longitude behind one of the buttons for sharing your status, then you won't get that information and you won't be able to complete the mapping capability. And then one other piece is okay. So I talked about sending company updates. And so you're going to configure an Active Directory group. And maybe you already have that, you know, company all employees or something. And if that's the case, then you can, as long as that group name is synced up to Azure Active Directory, then you can just go about your steps here to get that group. However, if you create a new one, you'll need to create that group in Active Directory and allow that group to sync. So someone in your IT organization will be leveraging Azure AD Connect, which has a synchronization frequency between your on-premises Active Directory and Azure AD up in the cloud. So it may take, you know, several hours up to potentially a day, depending on your sync frequency, for that group to show up in Azure AD so you can get that object GUID and configure that back in your application. The next thing I would say is, you know, if you found this helpful and you're interested in setting this up, or you're interested in any of the trials that I mentioned, you know, reach out to your Microsoft account team. They have resources and can help connect you up with the right folks to get this going for you and help you further. And in addition to that, I will be dropping in a set of links. So let me.
Yeah, and hey, Brian, while you're working on that, another question. Someone's asking, when he installs the Power App, is it best to do that in a new dedicated account for the app rather than my personal one? Otherwise, I worry that it would break if I ever leave the organization. What's the best practice?
Yes, I think that would be a best practice.
Okay, great. And then in addition to that, getting a lot of questions around text notifications. So there's the email and there is the chat option. So just to let everybody know, pushing text inside of Teams is not that yet there, but stay tuned on that. So just know it's not a functionality that's currently baked into this app. So if you do have that needs for any text messaging, you will have to do that outside of the app. And keep in mind too, for those of you that are also wanting to essentially push out comms to all of your organization, that's what the all company teams can be used for in this case. So just know that there are lots of ways that you can get these types of important communications out to your organization, including all company team, Yammer, again, specifically for this crisis app, embedding it right where they're already collaborating and communicating already. So just, you know, think about the unique need for the organization and set up what works well for you.
Yep. And I just wanted to highlight, this is an example of, we had set that message to flow in through Teams. And so that showed up in my feed. I could have changed that to email and it would have then sent an email notification with the same information. You can see how it puts a little bit of the blurb in there. And then if you click read more, it brings you out into the application where you can see the full notice. So again, that was set up through here. So one thing I would encourage, obviously before you go out and set this thing up and you put in an all users group, create a group with just yourself and maybe one of your peers and do some testing. Make sure you're really comfortable with the application, play around with it, get feedback from your group on, what is really the meaningful content to post in the different sections and go from there. Kelly, I think this is what you were referring to. If I set this to email, then I would then get that email notification instead of the push.
Correct. And then another really good question. Our organization is very large and global, split into multiple business units. Do you recommend deploying the app multiple times by business unit or accommodating globally?
It's really a matter of preference. One thing for consideration is language, depending on what your organization is centered around a common language or not. It would be feasible to set up regional versions of the application. Now, I'm not aware of a way to tie those to a common code base. In other words, if you deployed 5 versions of the application, those would be 5 different code bases to manage. So if you updated it, you would have to update all 5 of them. They would point to separate SharePoint lists, etc. Just something for consideration.
Yeah, great point there, Brian. And then somebody else is asking, can there be multiple SharePoint lists with groups of contacts to send different messages, or are you limited to one SharePoint list of contacts?
It's one SharePoint list. You said to send messages to groups of contacts. So like if I go, well, let's go back here. We'll go into the admin app.
Maybe show the contacts again so they can see.
Yeah. So if I go to company contacts, you'll see how we've got these twisties here. So it's right now we've done it by geographic region. But if you do create new contact, you'll see that twisty is really this. So maybe it was division. I mean, it's going to say country here, but you could put your divisions there. And then when you go into the application, that would be your logical grouping. So you could kind of multi-purpose that country concept there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. And then, so somebody has a question too. I think this is good for those that are potentially in a hybrid scenario. So they have the app installed, however, their on-prem Exchange users can't use this. Is this only Exchange Online? I think that's a good clarity question.
I'm not sure why they wouldn't be able to use it. The only dependency on Exchange is if you are delivering an email to those users. So that Active Directory group is going to resolve and that message will get sent to whoever is in it. So they should still be able to receive notifications. If they're saying they can't access Teams, they could potentially interface with this through the Teams web client if you haven't pushed out the rich client.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. I think that's all we have time for today, as I do want to ensure that we're staying on time today. To let everybody know, there were some comments about having this being recorded. This is currently being recorded and will be pushed on demand. So just check the TryThisAt.Work site, and also it will be posted up into YouTube as well. So just keep your eye on that. Within the next couple of days, it should be available. So again, we thank you all for attending today, and we hope that you found the information valuable. And thank you so much to Brian for presenting with us today. And we hope everybody has a